Welcome to the presentation lecture on student research, project development, and application. Today we'll be going through everywhere from the beginning, from the idea generation all the way to presenting your project and some tips and techniques, because we feel it's important that you know this right from the beginning. So we're happy to share this information, and we'll give you plenty of examples so that you know and how to get through your project. And as we say always, it's a journey, right? So we're going to go on a journey together.
أهلا بالجميع. أنا تالا أبو النجا، راح أكون مترجمة لكم اليوم عن دكتور مارك. هنا دكتور مارك بدأ بتقديم العرض، وهو البحث الطلابي، تطوير البحث وتطبيقه، وهي رحلة كما قال دكتور مارك من بداية التفكير بأفكار المشروع إلى عرضها في النهاية. شكرا.
Okay. Thank you, Tala, for today, and we appreciate your help today. So as I said, it's a journey, right? And this kind of map, it's a road map that takes us through IBDA. In this month and next month, for example, number one, we're going to look for ideas for projects. Some of you on the call today maybe attended some of the enrichment programs, the summer research programs at KAUST or at KFUPM or at KAU. But we're going to really look at how if you have not done that, what are some ways to generate ideas for projects? One thing Tala and I are going to stress is that you don't have to have gone to a research program to register for IBDA or to have a good idea. We're going to help you try to find some good ideas, even if you have not gone to a summer research program. So very important in that, number one. Number two, once you have an idea, how do you develop it? How do you test? How do you experiment? This year, when we come and see you at the regional fairs, hopefully if you make the regional fairs, we want to see experimentation. We want to see some data, some proof of concept, not just an idea. So we're really going to focus on number two is how do you develop that research project? Number three, you're going to be entering the competitions, and you know that from the IBDA site and the information you received, how to register and go through the competitions. And then, of course, number four is sustaining the journey. As Tala knows, we went working with her. She did go to ISEF. She's very successful at ISEF, but there's also the learning experience she had by doing her project and by looking at a problem and trying to solve a problem with a very good solution, and then using the skills that she learning how to choose an idea, learning how to experiment and get data, and learning how to communicate. And that's helped her and achieve what she's done now and being a student at KFUPM, which we're all very proud of. So it's not just for skills in IBDA, it's also skills for beyond IBDA when you go to college.
رحلة البحث عن المشروع وتطويره هي رحلة كاملة وتتضمن 4 مراحل أساسية. أول مرحلة هي أفكار المشاريع البحثية. في كثير من الطلبة شاركوا في برامج كاوست وKFUPM وعدة من الجامعات التي تساعدكم على تطوير مشاريعكم والبحث عن أفكاركم. لكن دكتور مارك يقول حتى لو ما شاركتوا بهذه البرامج لسه عندكم فرصة في ماي إنه يكون عندكم أفكار مشاريع ونقدر نطورها مع بعض. وفي هذا العرض راح ناخذكم من البداية اللي هي كيف نطلع أفكار بحثية. ثاني مرحلة هي تطبيق الفكرة، وهذا أكثر شيء راح نركز عليه اليوم. كيف ممكن نطور المشروع البحثي وكيف ممكن ناخذه من فكرة فقط إلى مشروع بحثي متضمن كل الأشياء البحثية. ثالث مرحلة هي المشاركة في مسابقات البحث العلمي اللي هي إبداع وآيسف إن شاء الله. ورابع رحلة هي الاستدامة على الرحلة بالخطوات اللي راح يقتضيها هذا العرض. وطبعا نعرف أن هدفكم أن تروحون آيسف وإبداع، لكن هناك في دروس من وضع وخوض تجربة البحث العلمي اللي راح تقعد معاكم إن شاء الله لوقت طويل.
So what are we going to talk about today? Quite a few things. We got five. I got a typo there. We have 5 sections we're going to do. We're going to do viable resources for research ideas, like we said in step 1. Step 2, developing your research. 3, types of strong and weak projects. We want to let you know what's a good project and what maybe is not so good project, so that you have an understanding of that. We want to maximize the research impact. That's a big thing you'll hear all year long from me and from your advisors and from the judges, is hey, you have this project, you've done it, now what is the impact? What's the real world? How do you apply that into the real world potentially? And then we're going to give you some overall research benefits. What does this mean? What does going through IBDA mean for your high school career, rest of your high school career, and also your college career? So we're going to be covering a lot of things, and we're going to be giving you a lot of examples.
هذا العرض يتضمن 5 أقسام. أول قسم هو الموارد والمصادر للأفكار البحثية. ثاني قسم هو تطوير المشروع البحثي. ثالث واحد هو مقارنة بين المشاريع القوية والضعيفة في البحث العلمي. وثالث قسم هو قسم راح تسمعون دكتور مارك والعديد من الدكاترة يركزون عليه، هو تحقيق أقصى قدر من التأثير للمشروع. وخامس سكشن وآخر واحد وهو الفوائد العامة للبحث العلمي اللي ممكن تستفيدون منها في رحلتكم في الثانوية والجامعة إن شاء الله.
Okay, thank you. So section 1, research ideas. Okay, and this is all about choosing a project topic. And like I said, those that have already experienced summer research programs, you either have an idea or you are focused on an idea. Some of you have probably experimented. But those of you that have not, here are some suggestions on choosing a project topic. One is pick an area of interest. I say this every year to students. Don't do something that just because it's in the news or something that, you know, oh, astrophysics or aviation, just because it's a cool topic. Pick something that you are interested in, some subject at school or something you and your family have talked about. Make it interesting to yourself because you'll do a lot better job and you'll have more fun. Number 2, review current STEM news articles. Look up Nature magazine or PubMed or those type of things that have articles just to see what's interesting out there and what's new and what's current. Third one, make observations about the local environment and community. What's around you? Are there issues with traffic, for example, in Riyadh that maybe can be solved? Or are there issues with mangroves on the coast in Saudi Arabia? What are some issues that maybe you can solve in your local community? Also consider societal and global issues, climate change, right? You have the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So what's climate change and clean water and all these things that are happening now in the world because we're getting bigger and bigger and more things are happening now. So there's a lot of issues out there that we can try to solve. And then a big one, the last one, of course, is something that's getting bigger and bigger every year is technology. There's so much out there right now, right? You have algorithms, you have machine learning, you have deep learning, you have reinforced learning, you have convolutional neural networks. You have all these things in the technology world that are being used for applications. So if you're interested in technology, there's so many things. And those are good projects because you need a mentor maybe, but you don't need a lab. You can do a lot of those things through programming. So those are kind of some helpful hints, those 5 about how to choose a project topic. Tala.
لمساعدتكم في اختيار العنوان للمشروع، أول شيء لازم تسوونه هو اختيار مجال يثير اهتمامكم. حتى في مجالات كثيرة ممكن تكون لازم تختارون واحد يثير اهتمامكم شخصيًا وله علاقة لكم فيه شخصيًا. ثاني شيء تسوونه هو مراجعة وقراءة مقالات حالية في STEM في نيتشر ماجازين وعديد من المجلات الأخرى اللي ممكن تقرؤون فيها عن الاختراعات والابتكارات والبحوث العلمية اللي حاليا قاعدين يسوونها الناس. ثالث شيء هو ملاحظات حول البيئة والمجتمع اللي حولكم. هل في مشاكل مرورية في الرياض أو أشجار المانغروف على سواحل السعودية؟ هل في مشاكل فيها؟ طالعوا في البيئة اللي حولكم واستنتجوا منها مشاكل ممكن تبدون عليها بحوث علمية. رابع شيء هو وضع المشاكل المجتمعية والعالمية في محل الاعتبار. ورابع شيء هو مراجعة التكنولوجيا الموجودة حاليا.
Okay. I just want to talk about this for a second because think about this while you're choosing your project or even if you have a project, you want to hit the sweet spot, and the sweet spot is that red right in the middle. That's where you get creative ideas, original ideas, innovative ideas. And how you do that is three basic things. Number 1, make sure your project is, I call it desirable. Make sure it's needed out there, okay? Make sure it's not something so out there that there's not a need for it. It has to be something that's useful, right? That's the first one. The second one is viability. make sure that it is something that you can do in terms of the technology and the supply. Some students do a project, well, I want to put airplanes with 5 wings or something. Well, that's not really viable, right? Not now at this point. So make sure it's something that's viable in terms of the technology, in terms of the supplies, materials. And then the third one is feasibility. Do you have time to do it? Okay. Do you as a student, and some of you are seniors or your last year, so you have a lot of, you have a lot of things that are going on. You have a lot of things that are going on in your lives and a lot of school, and you have all this stuff. So make sure it's something that you can do within the school year. That being said, you don't have to have the final answer, right? Even at ISEF, our team, and even Tala's project at ISEF, it's not all the way complete. There's still future work. There's still things to do. But make sure you have enough time to at least get the data done, the experimentation done to a good degree. So that's where you want to hit. You want to make sure those 3 things are taken care of in your mind before you start the study. Thanks, Tom.
في هذه الصفحة يركز فيها دكتور مارك على وين ممكن الأفكار الابتكارية تبعث أو تولد منه. هنا عندنا فين دايجرام يوريكم إذا اجتمعت الرغبة والقابلية على التحقيق والجدوى الاقتصادية مع بعض تولد منها الأفكار الإبداعية. في أول دائرة وهي دائرة الخضراء في الرغبة، وهذه كيف المشروع حقكم راح يكون مرغوب في السوق، هل راح يفيد الناس. في الدائرة الصفراء هو القابلية على التحقيق أو الاستدامة على للمشروع. وفي الدائرة الزرقاء هي الجدوى، هل أنتم راح تقدرون على مدار السنة الدراسية تشتغلون على المشروع. ممكن المشروع يكون فيه أعمال مستقبلية في النهاية، لكن هل راح تقدرون تحققون أهم أهداف للمشروع خلال السنة الدراسية. إذا اجتمعت هذه ال3 مع بعض راح تولد من العملية فكرة ابتكارية وبحث علمي.
And then start brainstorming. Once you have that in your mind, start brainstorming. And this is just a quick slide. We're not going to spend much time on it, but there is a process of brainstorming, right? You want to look at, if you have something of interest and you've seen something in the news, do divergent thinking, which means branch out, look at everything there is, look at all the different articles, look at all the different issues. Like, for example, if it's wastewater treatment, there's all sorts of things in wastewater treatment that you can look at in terms of the membranes or in terms of the use of other materials and dissolving materials. So there's all sorts of ways you can go. So start that because you want to make sure you get as much diversity in your thinking as possible. And once you have a list of that, then you get into critical thinking, which is more the convergent brainstorming and the kind of narrowing down the idea. And how you do that is through looking at research publications, looking through the previous studies in your field, in your university, and that's how you get down to the critical thinking. And you'll find what's called the research gap, right? So when you do the research, you'll see all these papers that have done certain things, and what you're trying to do is fill that gap and reach your idea for the project.
تبدأ عملية العصف الذهني من خلال العصف الذهني المتشعب، وهو التفكير والعصف الذهني في كثير والعديد من الأفكار. لكن من خلال القراءة والبحث في الخلفية العلمية راح نصل إلى عصف ذهني متجمع، ونجد الثغرات أو الفجوات البحثية في الخلفيات العلمية، ونحقق سؤال علمي أو مشكلة علمية محددة.
Good. And I'm not going to go through each one of these in too much detail, but this is a research gap I was talking about. So the gap is something that needs to be done in an area of research. All right. So as you look through the research, you're going to start finding, well, this one doesn't address the temperature of something, or this one doesn't address how the final outcomes will be in terms of viability. So you have to look at those things of what's missing, and there always is something missing no matter what. And that's how you can find out what a good project is and what a novel project is. So consider the missing pieces, right? What's in there, whether it's number of trials, the process, an added part to the process, combinational things. There's always going to be something that's in there as a gap in the research.
الفجوة العلمية هي شيء لم يتم تجربته أو اختباره من قبل من خلال البحوث العلمية القديمة، هي النواقص في الخلفية العلمية التي تجدها من خلال القراءة، وممكن تتعلق بطريقة البحث، تجميع البيانات وتحليلها أو عدد مرات التجربة، وتتعلق بأشياء كثير، ومهما كانت البحوث الموجودة في الخلفية راح تجد نواقص علمية أو فجوات ممكن أنت تحققها أو تساعد في حلها في بحثك.
So a gap might be a lack of understanding about how an instrument works in a certain situations. It might be a new method, like I said, a new organism. There's always things that you can add, and that's what we do as scientists and in my field is look at not just the papers that I do and the research I do, but others that say maybe there's something you can add to that or something different that you can do. That's how we do it in the real world. So you're just doing things that we've already done in the real world. So every project, every research project, every innovation project must be novel, must be creative in one way or another, and contribute to the overall goals of science.
أحد أهم الأهداف في البحث العلمي أن يكون البحث العلمي مبتكر وجديد، لهذا لازم يكون في فجوة علمية أنت قاعد تحلها بالبحث العلمي الذي تقوم فيه، فالفجوات العلمية ممكن تكون طريقة بحث قديمة أنت قاعد تساعد فيها، أو تجميع بيانات.
No, I'm on a call. Please don't call anymore.
هي نواقص موجودة في الخلفيات العلمية يتم حلها من البحث.
Okay, so what are some links that you can use that we can help? These are some helpful links. Again, we have this recorded, so you can look over this. I think Tala had looked at this before as well. So these are some ways to find out from looking at the research problems. So you look at abstracts. There's ICEF abstracts every year from 2014 on is abstracts from ICEF students, 21 different categories and disciplines. You have the project board, which I think the last 2 years they have all the PowerPoints and all the references and everything from ICEF projects, and then the rest of them that are from university and academic research. The one thing I want to address here, besides the links, is that the issue we had before, and we talked a little bit about, is those students that are just starting a project, weren't able to attend the summer research program. And please, try to do a project. And if you're thinking about it, you create your own idea. And we have many examples, including Tala, who her project was done at her school. There was a problem with the Braille issue at some students at her school, and she did a project based on that. There was another student that developed a computer program to look at hazardous chemical materials and create hazmat symbols from that, where before it took many months to do something like that, and he did it now in a week or a week and a half, and he went on to ICEF as well. So there is an opportunity for students not doing the research at summer programs to be involved in IBDA and even in ICEF. And the key, we'll go over some keys to doing that and how to do that in the future sections. But the first one is how to find that idea, right? How to find that novel idea. It doesn't have to be the most involved. A lot of the projects, if you're dealing with hydrogen production or fuel cells or new materials or new things in medicine, those are all great for research centers. But there's also, even at ICEF, some very basic ideas that have been done in a classroom or at a school. And as long as you go through the methodology, produce the data, right, and communicate the impact, that's the key. Remember, we talked about impact, is create the impact. Those are very good projects. So we're going to try to help you after this slide. We're going to try to help you determine what ideas may be worthwhile and what are the characteristics of good ideas. Okay.
في هذه الصفحة دكتور مارك يوضح بعد الموارد اللي ممكن تستعملونها كطلاب لتطوير بحوثكم العلمية. أول موقع هو موقع ملخصات مشاريع في ICEF، وثاني واحد بعد ممكن تطلعون على هذه المواقع وتتعلمون منها. الفكرة اللي بيأكد عليها دكتور مارك هو حتى إذا ما شاركتوا في برامج صيفية مثل البودكاست وهالبرامج اللي تساعدكم في البحوث العلمية لسه تقدرون تطورون بحث وتخترقون فكرة ممكن تطورونها وممكن تروحون آيسف. فأنا مثلا شاركت بآيسف في 2018 بفكرة بدون مساعدة أي برنامج، أنا طورتها بالبيت وسويتها مع بعض وبمساعدة د.مارك والعديد من الدكاترة الأخرى، ورحنا فيها آيسف. وكان في واحد طالب بعد مشروعه كان تحديد المواد الخطرة في المختبرات الكيميائية، وبهذا المشروع هو سواه بنفسه بدون مساعدة أي برامج بحثية وراح بهالمشروع آيسف.
Okay, great. And that was one of the questions, by the way, Tala, that's one of the questions we had from a previous session. The last session, I think, was how to do that. How can we, as students that haven't gone to a program, compete, and what do we have to do? So we're gonna really address that today. That was, by the way, that was the science research links, and on the next sheet we have engineering innovation links, and it's just important to differentiate the different types of projects, and we'll review that at the methodology. But I just want to let you know there's scientific research, which is pure research. You have a hypothesis and you're testing a hypothesis, and then in engineering and innovation, it's going through prototyping, right? So you do a test. You build a prototype, you do testing, you see what's right and wrong about it, you do another prototype, and you continue to work on it until you have a pretty good working prototype. And the same in computer science as well. You build an algorithm, you build a program, you do computational biology, for example, and you just keep programming until you have the solution. So there's two different types of projects that are done at IBDA and ISEF, and they're both acceptable. And again, whatever your level of interest is. So I did want to mention they're different links for different types of projects.
هناك فرق بين الصفحتين، الصفحة الأولى والصفحة الثانية. الصفحة الأولى توفر مصادر للمشاريع البحثية البحتة اللي يكون فيها فرضية وفي يكون حل الفرضية ونتائج وكذا، لكن الصفحة الثانية توفر مصادر للمشاريع الهندسية أو الابتكارية. كلتا المشاريع مشاريع تتقبلها موهبة وإبداع وتقدر تروح آيسف.
Okay. Also, I put in a slide for helpful project idea links. So these are where this was looking at how to look up research projects and publications. These are how to help you choose ideas. Okay, so you have like a topic selection wizard from Science Buddies. You have YouTubes on picking a topic and brainstorming. You also have the ISEF categories and subcategories, which are good because it'll give you the category and it'll give you the subcategories, which will give you like the details inside the specifics of that category. So these are all good sites to look at for trying to help choose an idea for a project.
للبحث على فكرة مبتكرة، هذه بعض المصادر اللي ممكن تدخلونها. في فيديوهات يوتيوب ممكن تدخلونها. في بعد موقع لآيسف يوريك المجالات والمجالات المحددة لكل مشروع. المجالات المحددة لكل مشروع ممكن تساعدك إن تشوف الفكرة المخصصة للمشروع والفكرة اللي تقتضيها المشروع بشكل مخصص.
Okay. All right, on to section 2, which now after you have your idea, whether you did in a summer program or you did it on yourself, you have your idea. Now what do you do? And it's very important, as I said before, is that when you get to the point when you register your project, it's going to be the concept and what you're going to do. But at the regional fairs and of course at the central fairs, we want to have some type of experimentation. We want to see that there's some practical work that can be done. You don't have to have everything. You can have the beginning of the project. You can have the setup. But it's very important that we see that this is a viable project, right? And that you can put something together. So these are the types of science research projects. And this, again, is the pure research to developing a hypothesis. And they can be anywhere from multiple trials where you're just testing the hypothesis and you have 100 trials and you're giving the data. It can be done through modeling, which is taking a big device or a big thing and putting it down to a little testable device or a little testable prototype. You have simulations, which is software. You have surveys, questionnaires, which are great for behavioral and social sciences, where you're trying to develop what a group thinks. And of course, you also have literature reviews, which are looking at previous literature and taking the data from that. So there's really, when you say, a lot of people ask me, well, Dr. Mark, I got this project, but I don't think can be tested. Well, these are all ways that you can test a project. So there'll be an answer for that. Say, it could be, like I said, regular physical trials. It could be the simulations. There's computer, obviously with technology out there, there's many free testing software that you could use for simulations or for things like that. So there's always a way to test a research project, and that's the key part. There's always a way to test.
في هذا القسم من العرض راح نتكلم عن تطوير المشروع العلمي. في عدة طرق ممكن نطور فيها المشروع العلمي، وهذه أشياء مهمة تعرفونها قبل ما تروحون مرحلة إبداع، لأن في إبداع ما راح يقتضي فقط مشروعكم على فكرة، لكن يجب أن يكون مشروعكم في طريقة لتجربة الفكرة. فأول طريقة ممكن نجرب فيها الفكرة هي تجربة عدة مرات، ومنها نجمع بيانات ونتكلم عن هذه البيانات. ثاني شيء هو النمذجة، وممكن ناخذ آلة كبيرة ونصغرها في العمل ونشوف كيف تشتغل ونشوف كيف تجمع بياناتنا. ثاني شيء هي المحاكاة. رابع شيء هو الاستطلاع، وهذا مفيد في المشاريع اللي تقتضي على المشاكل الاجتماعية والإنسانية. وآخر شيء هو مراجعة الخلفية العلمية من خلال قراءة مشاريع وبحوث قديمة.
Okay. And then these are the type of engineering projects, and you want to look at how things are going to. This is a breakthrough. It can be an entirely new concept where you come up with something like the iPhone, right? It can be something that is sustaining, which is improving a current product or service. So there's something already out there, but you think you can make it better, more effective, faster, quicker, cheaper, those types of things. So you're improving on something. There's a new market. It could be a current project, but you're applying it to Saudi Arabia. You're applying it to the Middle East, or something that's used elsewhere but hasn't been tried in your area and location. It could be disruptive as well. Simple ideas at a much lower cost. Very easy to use items that you can do, and all these can be tested, right? Because you're building something. You're going to build a prototype and you're going to test. So those are types of engineering projects.
أحد أنواع المشاريع الهندسية تتضمن الاختراقات، وهي أشياء جديدة تماماً وأفكار مبتكرة تماماً. ثاني شيء هي المحافظة أو الاستدامة على أفكار قديمة، هو التطوير على بحوث أو خدمة أو منتج موجود حالياً وتطوير عليه أو الزيادة عليه. ثالث شيء هو سوق جديد، هو تطبيق مشروع أو خدمة بطريقة مبتكرة في مكان جديد. ممكن يكون منتج موجود في أماكن أخرى في دول أخرى ولم يطبق هنا لسه، وتطبقونه أنتم من خلال مشروعكم. وآخر شيء هي أفكار بسيطة لكن ممكن تخلونها بتكلفة أقل بكثير.
And then, of course, we have types of CS project, computer science, and that's, we talked about technology earlier, and there's all sorts of things that are going on now. And if you go to ISEF, you just see so many more CS projects, and that could be, here's some examples of them: computer hardware, new smaller ways to do things, robotics and intelligent machines, which are like algorithms and those type of things are in there, but also robotics is a big thing, and having robotics do new things like surgery or movement issues in healthcare. There's control systems that are out there and ways to do that, improve how real life applications are done. Simulations and virtual reality is becoming bigger and bigger because it's easier and cheaper to do simulations first and then do the real world testing. Data structure, data sets, and using those, including with algorithms and those type of things. And of course, encryption and cybersecurity is becoming a big issue, right? As the world becomes smaller and smaller and our networks become interconnected, we have to find a way to protect all our data. So this is becoming bigger and bigger. There's summer programs now that are done in computer science, and the cool thing with computer science is that obviously there's so many applications: healthcare, material science, environmental. So even if you, like I said, the first thing you want to choose a project that you're interested in, a way to test that would be through, or a way to use that, or a way to develop that would be through computer science. But it always has many applications that you could choose to do. So it's a very diversified field of study. And again, ICEP is becoming bigger and bigger, and I think we'll see many more projects in the future in this area.
في هذه الصفحة هي أنواع المشاريع في علم الحاسب. علم الحاسب هو أحد المجالات اللي فيها كثير من التطبيقات، وأحد المجالات المثيرة للاهتمام في آيسف وفي إبداع، وفيها كثير من التطبيقات. أنواع هذه المشاريع هي تطوير أجهزة الكمبيوتر وأجزائه، الروبوتات والآلات الذكية، أنظمة التحكم، المحاكاة والواقع الافتراضي، بنية البيانات، الخوارزميات والتشفير. والتشفير أحد الأنواع من علم الحاسب اللي مثير للاهتمام لجميع الناس، لأن نحن صرنا في عصر النتورك كبير جدا، وكثير من الناس يبغوا يحافظوا على معلوماتهم الخاصة. فالتشفير خاصة هو أحد أنواع المشاريع في علم الحاسب اللي ممكن فيها كثير من الأفكار اللي ممكن تجيبونها.
Okay. And just to go through, we're not going to go through this in great detail, but I did want to let you know that there's different methodologies for each type of project. So the first one, as we talked about, pure science, and this is testing hypothesis, is scientific methodology. And as I said, you take an observation and then you look through background research and you take a hypothesis, right? And you test only that hypothesis. And you go through all the experiments and come up with a conclusion. Was the hypothesis proved or disproved? So it's a very simple way of doing things. It's used in mainly in life sciences, so all pure research. So you're actually doing looking at previous publications and find that gap and then conducting the study and coming up with that. So this is the one that's been around forever. It's been around for a very long time, the methodology, and it's the process that you would follow for the experimentation.
هذه الطريقة العلمية. الطريقة العلمية هي طريقة موجودة من زمان وتم اتباعها في كثير من البحوث. كل البحوث لازم تتبع هذه الطريقة، وفي فروقات من الطريقة العلمية بين مشروع ومشروع، فمو كل مشروع ممكن يتبع نفس الطريقة بالضبط، لكن هذا هو الفكرة الأساسية للطريقة العلمية.
Okay. And then there's the engineering and computer science process. Okay. So it's different from the scientific methodology in where we're defining a problem. You still do the background research, so there's some similarities, but then you specify the requirements, which is basically making a design, correct? So you do a design, you develop the first working prototype, you test, and then you ask yourself, does it meet the requirements? Yes or no? Okay. And then whatever you have to change, you change, and then you continue to test. And then you report how many times you've tested, and you report the data, and then communicate the results. So you see it's different, and it's also judged a little differently too. When you look at the judging criteria at IBDA and ICEP, if the judges see a scientific project, they'll go on the scientific methodology. If they see an engineering or CS project, they'll go on this and they'll be looking for it. And we have a lot more details in our training. We go through further training, but I just want to give you a broad idea of the difference between scientific and engineering projects.
هنا يوضح الدكتور الفروقات بين الطريقة العلمية في المشاريع الهندسية ومشاريع علم الحاسب والطريقة العلمية في البحوث العلمية البحث. ممكن تبدأ الطريقة العلمية بشكل متقارب، في لازم التعريف بالمشكلة والبحث في الخلفية العلمية وتحديد المتطلبات، لكن لما نجي عند اتباع تطوير النموذج الأولي واختبار الحل يختلف بين المشاريع الهندسية وتختلف المشاريع البحثية البحث. فهذه الفروقات بينها، وحتى أثناء التحكيم المحكم لما يعرف أن المشروع مشروع هندسي أو مشروع بحثي راح يختلف طريقة التحكيم وطريقة سؤاله للمشروع.
And once again, we have, if not in this workshop, we have a lot of references and a lot of links. So these kind of links will take you through YouTube training videos on scientific method, engineering design, and even some key computer science projects. So they're also good, not just for the methodology, but again, finding ideas for projects. So this is a really good and helpful. Again, we'll have this will all be recorded so you can take a look at these for help.
هذه مصادر لتطوير مشروعكم العلمي، راح تقتضي جميع المجالات، إذا كان علم حاسب أو هندسة أو أي من المجالات الأخرى ممكن تطلعون على هذه المواقع والمصادر، وممكن منها تطورون مشاريعكم. وهذا العرض يكون مسجل عشان إذا تبون بعدين تطلعون على المواقع.
Okay, great. So now that we've had ideas for projects, we have the methodology. Now, what makes a good project and what makes one that maybe is not so good? And I think this is important because we want to establish the we're trying to establish the standards and expectations, right? So at this point and moving forward, if you have those expectations of yourself and what a project looks like, it'll be a lot easier to implement, right? So I wanted to show you a couple slides that I think are very important to reaching this goal. And the first one I talk about is intangible project standards. And by tangible, I mean it's things that you can really see, right? And really things that you can do in your project. So this is kind of a list or a table of what the component is, what the standard is, and then you can go through and assess it and check it off as you go through in the date. So it's a really nice checklist as you go through your project. It includes things that some of the things we've talked about already, right? Project originality, looking up previous research to make sure yours is novel, that fills that gap. Title and category, and it gives you the standard. The title is clear, descriptive, and relates to the category. Scientific method, content, knowledge, data analysis, topic relevance, communication, abstract, SRC form. So as you go through your project and you're working on each one of these, you can check it off and say, yeah, hey, my project's good. I'm doing a good job. Or, oh, wait a minute, I missed. I don't know the answer. The judge asked me those 2 questions. I don't know the answer to it. I got to find out what that is. Or I don't have a good abstract. I got to redo my abstract. So this is a really good check for you at every level of the competition, and it provides you what the standard is, so you can create and continue to create a good project as you go along.
هذه عدة المقاييس اللي ممكن منها تقيسون مشاريعكم، وهذه المقاييس مقاييس ملموسة مادية ممكن تشوفونها في مشاريعكم وبناء عليها تحسنون المشاريع حقتكم. والمقاييس هذه تتضمن أصالة المشروع، العنوان والمجال العلمي، الطريقة العلمية، مستوى المحتوى، والعديد من المقاييس الأخرى اللي ممكن تطلعون عليها وتطلعون على مقاييس آيسف فيها، وبناء على ذلك تطورون مشاريعكم. فممكن إذا نظرنا إلى الملخص المشروع ممكن نشوف إيش ملخص المشروع يتضمن فيه آيسف وإيش لازم يكون في ملخص المشروع، وقارنوه في الملخص اللي اشتغلتوا عليه أنتوا، كيف ممكن تطورون ملخصكم حتى يوفي مقاييس آيسف.
And next we have what I call the intangible project standards. These are more that on the background, things that aren't usually seen, particularly with the methodology, but things that you have to make sure are still done within your project. And these include things like the first impressions when you're talking to a judge. Make sure that you show enthusiasm and good eye contact. When you're doing the project design on your poster, some things that you have to be careful of there. The project cycle, as far as it's complete. Every project that you look at for IBDA and ISEP has to be complete all the way from the beginning, the purpose to the application and even the references. Terminology, that you pronounce words the right way and you answer questions the right way. Critical thinking, if a judge asks you a question, try to process how to get to that answer and the best answer possible. Project marketing is really important because what you want to make sure is that you sell your project, right? That you give the judges enough information outside what your board says, but how everything looks and what this can do in the future. And I have a video, I have references from the lab that I worked in, those type of things that make your project more impressive. Also the training time and the presentation skills. You're going to spend a lot of time, and I know you have things, you have school, you have family considerations, but these projects take a long time, and Tala will tell you how much time she spent on her project. It's not a short amount of time. You do spend a lot of time, so you have to be prepared to do that, and also prepared to tell the judges how much time you spent, because they really need to know how dedicated you were to your project. So these are all, this is all a list here and of how to address those things in the project that aren't necessarily the content, but how you present it and how you make an impression to the judges.
في هذه الصفحة هناك مقاييس غير ملموسة أو غير مادية، وهي مقاييس حسية تزيد على المشروع. أحد هذه المقاييس هي الانطباع الأولي للمحكم، تقييم المشروع أو تصميمه، دورة المشروع، هل المشروع منتهي، هل بدايته ونهايته كاملة، هل الاهتمام الشخصي للمشروع، المصطلحات المستخدمة، وهل نطق المصطلحات المستخدمة كان المصطلحات العلمية كان كويس، التفكير النقدي، تسويق المشروع، هل أنت سوقت المشروع بشكل كامل. لازم لما تعرض المشروع تبين للحكم الأشياء اللي سويتها، المختبرات اللي اشتغلت فيها، الجدوى الاقتصادية للمشروع وكل هذا. فهذه أشياء ممكن ما تكون ملموسة نفس المقاييس في الصفحة الأولى، لكنها بنفس الأهمية للمشروع.
Okay. So what if we turn to that and we look at, the project, and then of course the biggest thing about IBDA and ISEF when you go, and hopefully you'll make it to at least the regionals, is you're going to be able to communicate it. You have to communicate it. And that's so important, because if you can't reach the judge's attention, if you can't explain your project, it's a big problem, because you won't make it to the next step, because judges won't understand what you were trying to do. So these are some of the characteristics, some of the things in communication that I've seen in the past that help you in your project. Number one, first impressions are important. We talk about this, I'll mention this in training this year, probably 200 times, is the hook, right? You have to have that hook. How do you tell the judge about the problem statement? Is it a statistic? Is it something that you got to be interested in? How are you going to bring the judge into your project? Know your audience. Know who you're talking to. You're talking to a specialist in your field, or if you're not, how do you address that person? And how do you make sure they understand the work? Guide the judges to the most important data. Your data is the key. Your data is important because it supports everything in your project. It supports your idea. It supports your applications. It supports the next steps and what you're going to do. So make sure the judge knows exactly when they come out of that session what your data, most important data is. You want to start off high level with the hook and the problem. Any questions you answer, make sure you answer them thoroughly. Let everyone know how much you know. Make comparison evaluations if possible. This is big, and Tala will tell you this, is that all the judges will ask you in every stage, well, how does that research compare with previous ones, or how does that prototype work compared to others in the market? They want to know so far how your project stands up to others. Try some type of project value added. What I mean by a value added is it a cost issue? What are the cost issues? If there's cost issues involved, is it inexpensive enough to use in industry? Is it going to be used? Can you talk to people in the industry? Will it be used? So try to add some type of, if it's environmental, will it be bad for the environment or good for the environment? So try to think of something beyond what your data is to what the value of your project will be. Make sure you look at the future work and say, okay, here's what I can do. Judges really like this. Okay, I can finish my next experimentation by February 2024. I can write my research paper in May, or April, and then I'll attend ISEF in May. So give them exact details of what your future work is going to be. And again, confirm the impact of your project, which we'll talk about later in the presentation.
أحد أهم الأشياء اللي راح تسوونها في مشاريعكم هو التواصل بالمشروع. بعد ما خلصوا كل الشغل المادي بالمشروع، كيف ممكن نوصل فكرة المشروع للحكام وللأشخاص اللي راح تعرضون المشروع له. فهنا في هذه الصفحة هي صفات العرض الماهر أو صفات العرض القوي. أول شيء وأحد أهم الأشياء اللي راح تشوفون دكتور مارك دائمًا يذكرها اللي هي الهوك. الهوك هو كيف تجذب المحكم، كيف تعطيه فكرة المشروع أو مشكلة المشروع بشكل مختصر وبشكل يجذبه. والانطباعات الأولية مهمة جدًا للمشروع. ثاني شيء هو لازم تعرف من هم جمهورك، أنت قاعد تشرح لمين؟ هل قاعد تشرح لشخص عارف مشروعك من الألف للياء وعارفه بشكل مخصص، أو قاعد تشرحه لجمهور عادي ما عندهم خلفية علمية عن المشروع؟ ثالث شيء هو لازم ترشد الحكم إلى أهم المعلومات في مشروعك. إيش هي المعلومات اللي راح تاخذ مشروعك وتفرقه من باقي المشاريع في المعرض؟ هذه هي المعلومات اللي لازم ترشد الحكم لها. لازم تتكلم بمصطلحات عامة في بداية العرض، أنت ما تعرف إذا الشخص اللي قدامك متخصص بالمشروع، فلازم المصطلحات العلمية تكون سهلة الفهم. اللي بعده هو لازم إذا سُئل سؤال على المشروع لازم تجاوبه بشكل كامل وبشكل شامل لكل متضمنات المشروع. ولازم تقوم بإجراء مقارنات والتقييم أثناء العرض. في سؤال راح يسألوكم جميع الحكام إذا جو يسمعون بحثكم، هو كيف المشروع حقكم مقارنة بالمشاريع الأخرى يختلف؟ فأنتم لو دخلتوا الميزة اللي موجودة بمشروعكم واللي تفرقها عن باقي المشاريع أثناء العرض، هذا راح يساعد المحكم إنه يعرف إيش اللي يميز مشروعكم. اللي بعده هو كيف سيستفيد مشروعكم بشكل عام، كيف مشروعكم راح يزيد للعالم، إيش المشكلة اللي راح يحلها، إيش هي الجدوى الاقتصادية وكذا. بعدها لازم تفصيل ووضع تواريخ واضحة في الأعمال المستقبلية بشكل مفصل، وبعدها أكد على التأثير وأهمية مشروعك بشكل عام.
Okay, and conversely, what are some of the things that I've seen in the past few years that are weaker communication characteristics? One is looking, when you're talking to the judges, you're looking at the poster all the time and you're not paying attention to them. It's more, we say it's more of a conversation than a presentation. So you're conversing with the judges. So it's an eye contact, talking to the judges, not looking at your poster. Making the introduction too long or complicated. A lot of students, especially in the beginning, they just talk about the background too much. They'll go into all these issues about details on the chemistry of something or the solar panels, each layer, and they'll spend maybe 8 or 9 or 10 minutes on the introduction. All of a sudden, they don't have time for the data and for the applications and the impact, which are the most important part. Make sure you pronounce scientific terminology correctly. Learn the right ways to pronounce it. Obviously, in the IBDA and up to the national fair, you can speak in Arabic, and even at ISEP, you can speak in Arabic as well, which they'll have translators. But if you're speaking in making any scientific terminology in either language, make sure it's accurate. Not highlighting the experimental novelty. Every judge is going to ask you, what's new about your project? What did you do different? How'd you approach this differently? Acting if the judge is wrong. If the judge may be tired, a judge may ask the same question 10 times, but answer the question every time, and don't say, "Oh, you already asked me that question." Just answer the question the judge is asking. Make sure you mention the number of trials. A lot of students don't mention the number of trials, how hard they worked. This took me. I was at KAUST, for example, for 6 weeks. I did 100 trials. I went back in January for the winter enrichment program. I did another 50 trials. Let them know how hard and how long you worked on it. And also one of the big things is students don't match the procedures with the data. So the students will say, we did all these procedures, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And all of a sudden the data doesn't have step 4 or 5, no results. And what happens is the students say, well, I was going to do that in the future. I was going to do that next month or next year. Well, don't do that. Match the procedures with the data. Anything extra you'll put in future works, right? That's your next step. That's your future works. So these are some common issues that students have, especially the first stage of the fairs, but even at national fair. So make sure you don't do these.
في هذه الصفحة هي صفات العرض الضعيف أو هي بعض الصفات اللي تتجنبوها أثناء العرض. أول واحد هو عدم توزيع النظر على المحكم ومواجهة لوحة العرض العلمية طوال الوقت. دكتور مارك يقول إن العرض لازم يكون محادثة، فيها محادثة للحكم بدل ما تكون عرض فقط، لازم يكون في النظر على الحكم وتوزيع النظر عليه. ثاني شيء هو جعل المقدمة طويلة ومعقدة، ممكن تتكلمون كثير عن الخلفية العلمية، لا لازم نحن بس نتكلم بشكل مختصر وبعدين ندخل في المشروع وأهميته، وما نركز على المشكلة قد ما نركز على أهمية المشروع. ثالث شيء هو النطق الخاطئ للمصطلحات العلمية، ممكن تقدمون باللغة العربية أو باللغة الإنجليزية من في كل المعارض في إبداع في آيسف، لكن لازم تتأكدون إن حتى لو قدمتوا بالعربي أو بالإنجليزي إن النطق للمصطلحات العلمية يكون نطق صحيح. اللي بعده هو عدم توضيح وتأكيد على المواضع الابتكارية في المشروع أو التأثير أو أهمية المشروع بشكل عام. واللي بعده هو تغليط الحكم أو تصرف كأن المحكم غلط. ممكن المحكم يكون تعبان وحكم العديد من المشاريع، ممكن يسأل نفس السؤال أكثر من مرة، لكن حتى لو سأل السؤال أكثر من مرة أو قال شيء غلط لازم ما تتصرفون وكأنه خطأ. اللي بعده هو عدم ذكر عدد المرات التي قمت بها بالتجربة، هذا شيء مرة مهم، حتى خاصة إذا كنتوا اشتغلتوا بمختبرات خارج في كاوست وكذا لازم تذكرون عدد المرات اللي اشتغلتوا فيها على المشروع. وآخر شيء هو عدم مطابقة الإجراءات مع البيانات. كثير منكم عنده أعمال مستقبلية راح يسويها بعدين، لكن تأكدوا أن الأشياء اللي سويتوها والتجربة اللي قمتوا فيها تتطابق مع البيانات اللي جمعتوها، خاصة في لوحة العرض في مكان محدد للإجراءات، والمكان المحدد للإجراءات لازم منه توضعون منه البيانات كلها اللي خذيتوها من الإجراء وما يكون في شيء ناقص، والأشياء اللي ما سويتوها هذه أشياء ممكن تحطونها في الأعمال المستقبلية.
Okay. Now, section 4, we talked about the impact, right? And this is one section I was asked by Moiba to do because it's very important at IBDA and especially at ISEF. They're looking at what that impact is, what's the real world application. So just to give you the first thing to talk about is what's the criteria at IBDA and at ISEF. And so when you the first stage, you'll put in your project, you put in your ideas. They'll look at it as far as what the concept is and how it's written if you filled out everything completely. But after that, at the the regionals and the central and the national fair, we're going to be going off the criteria. So if you look at the criteria, it almost follows exactly what we've talked about already. You have the research question, which is the problem statement, then the research gap. You have the design methodology, which we discussed in section 2. You have the data analysis, which we've talked about, and how to make a strong project. That's the most important part, is the data. You have the creativity on the criteria. Creativity is the novelty, which we've discussed, and how to fill that research gap. Then you have the poster, and if there's a poster, and the poster in the interview. So it's the skills, the communication skills you have. So I just want to let you know, and it's important to know this here in this slide, because when we talk about impact, we're going to look into each one of these in terms of how you can supply the impact of your project.
في هذا القسم من العرض راح نتكلم عن تحقيق أقصى حد للتأثير للمشروع، كيف ممكن أنتوا تزيدون من التأثير هذا المشروع وأهميته. في هنا عدة مقاييس لازم تتبعونها، وهي المقاييس اللي راح تتحكمون عليها بالنسبة للمشروع. أول واحد منها هو السؤال البحثي، ثاني شيء هو تصميم طريقة التجربة والبيانات وتحليل البيانات، الابتكار أو المواضع الابتكارية وأهمية المشروع. اللي بعده هي لوحة العرض والمقابلة الشخصية، والمقابلة الشخصية هي لما تعرضون حقكم المشروع للمحكم.
All right, so let's look at the strongest part. There's different parts of each way to make an impact, and a lot of this we've kind of addressed or discussed or mentioned before, but I want to get a little bit more detail. So what's the strongest research part as far as the impact? Number one is novelty. Okay, so when you mention and you talk about the hook, which we mentioned, and describe the purpose, clearly mention what the novelty of your work is. My method was new. I used this material, sodium chloride to do this. I ran this trial with Saudi patients and before it was done with Chinese patients or US patients. What is your not grab that right away? And that's a big impact, because now the judge sees two things the judge has seen. One, you've done your background research, right? Because you know the gap, you've done background research. And number two, you know how you're filling that, right? That you filled that gap, and you can be able to communicate what's new about your work in the world, and that you've got a novel research. So that's the first one we always ask about, is the novelty.
أحد أقوى الأجزاء في المشروع العلمي هو الابتكار. الابتكار هو أحد الأشياء اللي يركزون فيها المحكمين بشكل أساسي، وهو لازم تصل فيه موضوع الابتكار للمشروع بالسؤال البحثي. إيش الحل اللي سويته عشان تحل السؤال البحثي أو المشكلة البحثية. اللي بعده هو صف هدف مشروعك بشكل واضح، وأكد على الموضوع الابتكار في مشروعك بشكل واضح جدا. هل الطريقة البحثية اللي سويتها غير؟ هل العينة اللي اختبرت المشروع عليها غير من العينات اللي سويتها من قبل؟ هذا الشيء راح يؤكد للمحكم إنك فاهم الفجوات العلمية الموجودة في البحث، وإنك اشتغلت على البحث بنفسك.
Okay. The second strongest research part that I can tell you as far as the impact to the judges is the work ethic. Make sure, and I said this before, but make sure they know how much time you have done on this. Summarize your procedures, right? When you're talking about the procedures, summarize your procedures, but tell them the number of trials or the number of prototypes that you've had, or the number of times that you had to go get new supplies or try new materials. Let them know everything that went into that regarding your dedication and your critical thinking to this, because you're going to, believe me, you think, oh, I can do the project, I can do maybe once a week, but by the time if you get really involved in it and really interested in it, it's going to take time, and you're going to spend a lot of work and a lot of effort into it. So show pictures of you in the lab, or show pictures of you in the workplace, or show pictures of your programming, of your code, if you have code. Show them how much work, and I think that's something that students don't do enough, is all the effort that you put into it. Even at ICEF, I always ask students at ICEF, how long does this take you? How much work did you put into it? Well, I did the summer program here for 6 weeks. I continued my project with my mentor. I went to a couple more workshops. So, I mean, I don't know. I've never added up, maybe Tala can guess, but I've never added up the amount of time a student spends on the project all the way through the stages in ICEF. It must be hundreds of hours. So give them the time frame. Give the judges the time frame. I worked on this project all year, and I'm so happy to be able to present, and I'm going to continue working on it in my future works, which you'll give them. So it's very important that judges know, because every time I talk to the judges in the rooms, they're like, well, I don't know if the student put a lot of time into it. They're still got a lot to do. I'm like, well, let's ask the student the question: how much time did you devote? So make it a strong part of your research.
ثاني شيء وأحد أهم النقاط في المشروع العلمي هو أخلاقيات العمل. لازم تلخص طريقة العمل، وتأكد عدد المرات اللي أعدت فيها التجربة، أو عدد المرات اللي طلبت فيها مواد أخرى عشان تعيد التجربة. لازم ضع صور لك في المختبر وأنت تشتغل، أو صور كود الكود اللي سويته المشروع، إذا كان المشروع في علم الحاسب. ضع أوقات العمل من المشروع، واذكر عدد ساعات العمل. الكثير منكم اللي شارك في برامج بحثية من قبل ممكن ما عنده عدد ساعات عمل محددة، لكن ممكن تتوقعون أو تحاولون تشوفون عدد الأوقات العمل أو عدد ساعات العمل بشكل عام، لأن هذا يوضح للمحكم أنكم اشتغلتوا على البحث بشكل جدي، وأنكم طوال السنة هذه كنتوا تاخذون البحث وتشتغلون عليه شغل.
Okay. The third part of making a big impact is the key data. Okay, so again, that we said before, this is the most important part, and they need to understand exactly what your data is and what the relevance is to the project. So organize very clearly your data and graphs. And some students say, well, I got so many, what do I put in there for data and graphs? Well, put your most important ones, right? So if you have several SEMs, for example, characterizations, put the one that made the most difference at the end and show how the morphology of that material or substance is. So put the most important ones in there, put enough that it makes a good substance, but that you're able to explain it and go through each one of those graphs. Make sure you label and refer to the figures. So you have figure 1 when you're talking to the judge or the person, say as you see in figure 2, as you see in figure 3. So their eyes will go right to that data and understand it. Make sure you explain the x-axis and the y-axis on graphs or on tables, all the columns, and describe why that data is important to the overall work. So for example, if you're doing a project on solar cells and you're doing the efficiency of the solar cell, say, hey, that's 13. The efficiency of this solar cell using this material is 14.7. Previously, it's very important because previously they were at 12, or previously they were at 11. So describe why they're important to your overall work, and summarize everything in the results section. So the results section is basically what you have done, the most important data that you have, and referring back to the figure. So the judge wants to just go through a quick evaluation of your results. It's right there. But make sure, again, the key part of data is making it very organized, because if the judge looks at it and is confused, it'll be tough to guide them through it. So make it as easy to understand as possible and explain it that way.
البيانات المهمة في المشروع هي أحد أهم الأشياء في المشروع اللي لازم توضحها بشكل عام للمحكم. الطريقة الأولى ممكن فيها توضح البيانات المهمة هو إنك ترتب البيانات والرسوم البيانية بشكل مرتب في لوحة العرض، حيث إن المحكم يقدر يفهم الرسوم البيانية وإيش أهميتها للمشروع. لازم بعد للبيانات والرسوم البيانية تحط أسماء تحتها، بحيث لما تتكلم أو تعرض المشروع ممكن ترجع لرقم الرسم البياني أو ترجع لرقم الصورة وتشرح فيه. إذا كان في عندك عدة رسوم بيانية مهمة أو لأنك سويت التجربة أكثر من مرة، فيجب أن تحط الرسم البياني اللي غير في المشروع بشكل أكثر أو شكل أكبر. وأنت تتكلم عن المشروع بين ليش هذا الرسم البياني أو ليش البيانات في هذا أو النقطة في هذا الرسم البياني هي استنتجت منها النتائج وجبت منها أهمية المشروع. والنتائج في قسم النتائج في لوحة العرض هناك لخص كل البيانات اللي جمعتها من التجربة.
Okay. Number 4, strongest part, future work, and we discussed that a little bit. Make sure that you put in the dates for that short term, and usually what we mean by short term is anything in this year, in the school year. So anywhere all the way towards May or June is kind of short term work. Longer term is after that. Make sure you give the reason for it. So if you say I'm going to run more trials, say because we feel that 3 was not enough or 10 was not enough, or if you're going to add another material, say why you're adding that material. Just don't state the future, what the work is or the task, say why you're doing it. And make strong inferences. What I mean by that is, hey, if we do more trials, we'll get more significant data, or if we add another material, it may add to the efficiency of a solar panel, for example. So why you're doing the work and what results that could maybe lead to. But very important for the judge to know that, because it's all about improving, as we talked about this, the journey. It's all about improving your communication skills. It's all about improving the content of your project. So make sure the judges know that every judge will ask, well, what are you going to do next? You got all these, and they may give you advice too. And you need to do this, you need to make a comparison, or you need to do a TEM for morphology. They'll give you advice on what to do, but very, very important to make sure they're clearly stated the future work on your project.
أحد أهم النقاط في المشروع هو مدى قابلية المشروع للتطوير مستقبلًا، فالأعمال المستقبلية هي شيء يطالعون فيه الحكام بشكل خاص ويركزون عليه، ففي الأعمال المستقبلية تقدر تقسمون الأعمال إلى أعمال قصيرة المدى وأعمال طويلة المدى. في أعمال قصيرة المدى لازم تحددون ليش تبون هذه الأعمال المستقبلية راح تكون، إيش هو الوقت أو الزمن اللي راح يستغرق تسوون هذه فيه الأعمال المستقبلية، وين المكان، إيش المادة اللي بتستخدمونها، لا يجب التفصيل في الأعمال المستقبلية عشان توضحون للمحكم أهمية هذه الأعمال المستقبلية وكيف ممكن تساعد بحثكم. ممكن بعد لما توضحون الأعمال المستقبلية توضحون للحكم أهمية هذه الأعمال المستقبلية، يعني إذا سوينا هذا العمل راح ممكن يزيد هذا الشيء من المشروع أو راح يحسن المشروع بهذه الطريقة، فالأعمال المستقبلية شيء مرة مهم في المشروع وشيء يركزون عليه الحكام.
Okay. And the biggest, this is number 5, this is the last of the strongest research part, and it involves your research impact. And this is what you're going to say, and this is your final thing you're going to say in your presentation. And when you also write your paper, you write your registration information, is what's the impact of the research? And there's 4 ways to do that. Number 1, relate to how the project bridged the research gap. Remember, we talked about you going through the previous publications, what the gap is, what the need is, and then how you're going to fill it. Well, did it fill it? Did it not? Partially. There's always going to be more to do, but you can say, hey, so far we've, this is what we've accomplished, and this is how much further we have to do. So that's one way, is how to bridge that research gap. Number 2, bring the judge in the real world. How it can be implemented? Many judges at the National Fair and at ISEF say, well, how can this be used? Tell me if it's a medical project, how will the physician use it to diagnose a patient of cancer or of diabetes? Show me how it can be implemented. If it's used in material science and wastewater, how can it be used in a plant or facility? If you can actually do a trial on that, it'd be great, but most students can't. So just think and tell the judge how it can be implemented in the real world. Number 3, describe the potential benefit and relate back to the hook. This is a great way to end the project. When you say, as we discussed, by the year 2050, we have to double our food production in the world, right? You have to double your food production. And you can say this project hopefully will reduce that amount because we're doing seed germination on striga plants. So reducing the amount of weeds in plants, so we're going to be able to produce more. So bring it back into that hook, into that big picture, we call it. And then number 4, we talked about value added information, which is cost. Could be cost, could be real world trials. How you took the next step, in implementing your research. And judges will love that. I'm telling you that if you haven't listened to any slide in my presentation, listen to this one, because this will get you, besides doing the work, you have to do the work, but this will get you further in the competition, the stages, and Tala will tell you it will, because you are bringing it into the real world. You're bringing how your project impacted potentially, or now and potentially in the real world. So it's a very important slide to remember.
هذه الصفحة أحد أهم الصفحات في هذا العرض، وهي أهمية وتأثير المشروع حقك. لازم تصل أهمية المشروع بالفجوة اللي كنت بتحلها بالبداية. نحن ذكرنا ببداية العرض هي الفجوات أو الثغرات العلمية اللي أنت أثناء قراءة الخلفية العلمية لقيتها، كيف المشروع هذا راح يحل أو يغلق على هذه الثغرات وهذه الفجوات. بعد هذا راح تقول للمحكم كيف هذا المشروع ممكن يطبق في الحياة، كيف المشروع هذا ممكن يساعد في تشخيص المرضى، في علاج هذا المرض أو أيًا كان، لكن يجب أن أتأكد على أهمية هذا المشروع وكيف إنه راح يطبق في الحياة وكيف راح يطبق بعدين. شيء بعد يذكر في الفجوات أو الثغرات العلمية هو يمكن إن أنت ما غطيت على كامل الثغرة، لكن أنت سويت أو طورت على مشروعك كفاية إنه يغطي بعض من المشاكل العلمية القديمة، فلازم تبين بعد للمحكم إيش الأشياء اللي خلصتها وإيش الأشياء اللي تبي تعملها مستقبلاً. ثالث شيء هو الهوك، وهو شيء أكدنا على أهميته في بداية العرض، وهذا شيء ممكن كمان تقوله مرة ثانية بنهاية العرض العلمي. كيف المشروع حقك راح يحل المشكلة الأساسية والمشكلة شديدة الأهمية اللي قدمتها بالبداية. آخر شيء هو كيف ممكن يطبق المشروع، هل يحتاج ما هو الفائدة الاقتصادية حقتها، كم يحتاج عشان يطبق في الحياة الحقيقية، وكم يحتاج، إيش الأشياء اللي يحتاجها عشان المشروع يخرج نطاق فقط مشروع، كيف يكون شيء حقيقي يستخدم.
And just Tala, if you could add that it's also important if you think about it, not just for now in high school, but also if you're working with mentors in college, or you're doing an internship, and even myself, this is how we sell the project and how we get grants or we get money for our projects, is we do these steps exactly. So if this is something that if you continue in research or engineering or innovation, you're going to use these 4 steps for sure, not only in your college career but even beyond potentially.
لتأكيد أهمية النقاط اللي ذكرها دكتور مارك، فهي أشياء أنتم راح تستخدمونها خارج نطاق إبداع وآيسف. هي أشياء دكتور مارك وعديد من الدكاترة اللي ممكن أنتم الآن تشتغلون معهم واللي راح تشتغلون معهم مستقبلاً قاعدين يستخدموها. إذا اشتغلتوا في مشاريع بحثية بعدين، هذه أهمية المشروع هو أحد أهم الأشياء اللي لازم تركزون عليها لما تقدمون المشاريع لأي شخص.
Okay, great. The last section before we go to questions is the overall research benefits, and I wanted to provide this because I think it's important that you all understand of why do a project. Besides, I mean, obviously we've done very well at ISEF. That's a big deal, and national pride and all that. But there's other reasons to do in the future for STEM, for benefits of doing a project. Obviously, the fields in STEM are so needed and necessary out there. Most of the job growth will be there in the future. STEM occupations have grown 79% since 1990. The Vision 2030 talks about knowledge-based society and getting away from the independence and oil-related fields. So it's so important for that. A lot of it's in STEM. Global collaboration. I mean, I can't tell you how many times it's worked for me in terms of collaborating with my medical projects all over the world. Australia, Nepal, Brazil, Europe. It is an important part of what you're doing as far as overall collaboration. And the key is, even if you don't go into STEM, it's still a benefit of how to think, the skills of how to think like a scientist. And you can apply that if you're going into science or engineering or CS, computer science. You're going to get the skills from IBDA. You're going to get the methodology skills like we talked about, the communication skills, but they're also overall skills, the 21st century skills they talk about for students your age, and how to do teamwork, leadership, critical thinking, all those things even outside of science that will be helpful if you choose to be a lawyer or you choose to be a business person. These are skills that you'll learn at IBDA that'll help you become better individuals in terms of your careers in the future.
في هذه الصفحة يتكلم فيها دكتور مارك ويوضح فيها أهميات البحث العلمي بشكل عام في حياتكم المستقبلية إن شاء الله. في نمو في سوق العمل، وهذا النمو راح يزيد مع السنين القادمة، وراح يفيدكم إذا كنتوا تشتغلون على بحوث علمية الحين. من عام 1990 سوق العمل في المجالات العلمية زاد بنسبة 79%. بعد أحد أهميات البحث العلمي هو إنه يساعدكم على مشاركة أفكاركم العلمية مع ناس من جميع نطاق العالم. فدكتور مارك قال مثال عن بحوثه هو العلمية الشخصية، كيف خلته يشارك علمه مع ناس من أوروبا، ناس من آسيا، ناس من جميع نطاق العالم. وآخر شيء هو حتى إذا أنتم ما دخلتوا في مجالات علمية، فالبحث العلمي راح يساعدكم على التفكير النقدي وإنكم تنمون كثير من المهارات اللي راح تستخدمونها في كل المجالات.
Okay, a couple more just benefits for students going through projects. They're a way to really look at increasing the knowledge, and again, other things like reading comprehension, analyzing things, comparing and contrasting, all these. I'm not going to go through each one. Tali, you don't have to go through each one, but just again, those things that you're going to be using in anything in college, in science, of course, but anything in college or beyond. So it's going to give you so much information and so many advantages over other students that aren't doing this type of project-based learning.
في أهميات تقنية راح تتعلمونها من خلال عملكم للمشروع العلمي اللي راح تميزكم عن باقي الطلبة في مراحلكم الدراسية. راح يتطلبكم المشروع العلمي أن تتعلمون كثير من المهارات اللي راح تستخدمونها مستقبلا إن شاء الله.
Just some overall benefits for you as an individual, for students. Number one, it's going to enhance your research experience. If you've always wanted to do a project, or maybe you've done one before but want to continue doing your experiments. A couple students I've talked to in the past have done IBDA for 3, 4, maybe even 5 years, and they want to get further each stage. So it's a great way to enhance your research experience. Number two, challenging science research. You can really challenge yourself, learn the scientific method, and learn your presentation skills, and become a better student of science and technology, engineering, and math. So it gives you that advantage again. You're going to have these skills coming out of high school, and then even most importantly, what I always say in my lectures, and this is really key, it really can expand your future horizons and your future successes, because I'm telling you, if you want to go to any college, especially if you're US or Europe, they love students that do project-based learning. They love students that do science fair projects. So it's great for college preparation if you're looking at applying to US colleges and you have to do the Common App. They love to see that IBDA Science Fair or ISAF Science Fair winner. They love to see that. But there's also other global opportunities. So even if you don't go to US college, if you stay in country and do college, there's so many, and Tala can tell you, there's so many competitions and so many collaborative opportunities out there, including a lot of Olympiads, innovation conferences for college students and beyond, where you can really internships that you can really increase and enhance your knowledge of a certain field, or even if you just want to explore things and do new things. So this whole, I say that, science and engineering fair, the IBDA, really opens up your world, or opens yourself up to the world in a lot of different ways. You'll learn going through this. You'll meet so many different types of people and students and advisors that are giving you, hey, advice and how they worked with this group in Brazil or that group in Canada. So it really does open up your world by doing this.
في هذه الصفحة بعد يوضح دكتور مارك أهميات أخرى للبحث العلمي في حياتكم بشكل عام. راح من خلال البحث العلمي راح تكتسبون مهارات تقنية راح تساعدكم في الجامعة، راح تساعدكم في الكثير من المواضيع الأكاديمية اللي راح تميزكم عن باقي الطلبة في مراحلكم الدراسية. وأحد أجمل الأشياء اللي راح تتعلمونها من البحث العلمي إنه البحث العلمي مو بس راح يساعدكم في التقديم على الجامعات العالمية خارجاً، يعني جامعات في أمريكا وكذا، لكن راح يساعدكم في تكوين علاقات عالمية مع ناس راح يساعدونكم مستقبلاً خارج نطاق المرحلة الثانوية أو المرحلة المتوسطة. راح يكون عندكم علاقات وثيقة مع ناس راح تسوون معهم بحوث، راح تروحون معهم معارض علمية مستقبلاً.
And again, I just want to end it on this slide, that it's the journey and it's the key, right? So everywhere from, you see the first slide on the top left, experimentation, being in a lab or doing your work at school or at home, and then the middle slide, the competition, that's a picture of ISEF. I forgot what year. I think it was 2000, before COVID, I think that one was. But all the projects in different categories that you're judged against and meeting new people. And then, of course, on the bottom right is the success that the amazing success. I've never seen anything like it. As I said, we met with the president of ISEF before this call, and she was just like, she said, this is what she said, true. I don't know if this is the exact quote, but she said that the Harvard or I think she said Harvard or MIT or one of those big colleges should come to Saudi Arabia and do a case study on us, on Ibda and the students, and how we've gone in 12 years from maybe 2 students, I think, and 1 award to 35 students and 27 awards last year. It is an amazing, I'm telling you, I've been doing this for 22 years now with science and engineering fairs, and I've never seen anything like it in my life. So, and I know you all, a lot of you are really excited to get started and try to become the next great team, Saudi team at ISA. But again, that's not the important part. The important part is the journey, right? Is going through the learning process. Even if you're a freshman and a sophomore and just say, hey, I want to try a project, try it. And start to learn, and maybe you'll get to the regional, and next year you can try a better project or a bigger project, and maybe get to the national and so on. And I see a lot of students do that. So just think of it as a learning process, a learning journey that a lot of your peers before you have done and gone through it, like Tala, and she can tell you her experience of going through it and being successful. But it's something that has grown so much, and we've got the structure, we've got the best in the world, really, to give you. So that's my message.
هنا وصلنا إلى نهاية العرض. زي ما انتم شايفين في العرض انتم راح تبدون على مشاريعكم من الشغل بمختبرات، وبعدين راح تشاركون بمعارض علمية، وبإذن الله وإن شاء الله راح تفوزون فيها إن شاء الله. حتى إذا ما فزتوا فيها فهذه فرصة جميلة أنكم تتعلمون من البحوث العلمية وتكتسبون الكثير من المهارات زي ما دكتور مارك قال. وأتمنى لكم كل التوفيق يا رب في مسيرتكم في إبداع وآيسف إن شاء الله، وفي بحوثكم العلمية. شكرا.
Okay, now I guess Tala's time for questions. I don't know how we're going to work that.
Yeah, Miss Nov sent me some questions. I guess I'll ask you the questions now.
I'm just trying to unshare my screen here. Stop sharing. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. As for the first question, should there be scientific applications for the project? هل يجب أن يكون هناك تطبيق علمي على المشاريع العلمية؟
Yeah, definitely. We talked about that, right? For the applications, and that's kind of what the impact we talked about, right? So when you have your work done, is how that's going to be applied in the real world, how it's going to be implemented, what are the benefits, right? Relating back to the hook, and how far you got through that research gap. So there definitely should be the application. The big part of when she says or he or she says applications is how can it be used, right? How can it be used by scientists, or how can it be used by engineers, or how can it be used in medicine or health? So definitely, it is a required part of the methodology. So you have to have that in your registration. You have to have it on your poster, and you have to talk about it with the judges.
Okay. جواب دكتور مارك على هذا السؤال هو أن التطبيقات العلمية مهمة جدا لنجاح المشروع العلمي. إذا كانت تطبيقات هندسية أو تطبيقات علمية أو كيف ممكن المشروع يستخدم في الحياة الحقيقية، فهذا شيء مهم جدا ذكره في المشاريع العلمية. Okay. As for the second question says that should there be an economical I guess, should there be something to get out of the project economically?
It doesn't necessarily. Oh, you want to say that in Arabic? Sorry.
هل يجب أن تقوم بالتجارة أو المقايضة في المشروع العلمي؟
It's not required to produce an economical feasibility study for the project. It doesn't have to be a product or a service that you're going to sell. It doesn't have to have a cost analysis. But as we said in the value added part, you want to provide some type of value added if you can. So if there's an issue, regular research, pure research, like if I'm doing a work on my microbiology and infectious diseases and working on a cure or a treatment for tuberculosis, there's not going to be anything really in the beginning I can do because I still have a lot. That's just testing the hypothesis. So there's really no economic part of that. But if you're doing a prototype on something, whether it's maybe a membrane, for example, you want to at least get the material cost, right? You're not going to know the final cost, but material costs. So I think if there's a reason to, and if it's available, then yeah, try to do some type of economic analysis on it. You don't have to do that at first. That's not part of what the judges will not grade it. The judges will not grade the economic part of it in the beginning. When you get to national, central fairs and national, they'll start helping you, and advisors will help you more about how to tailor it. But it's not part of the methodology, so it's more of a value added that will help you with the judges.
جواب دكتور مارك على هذا السؤال هو أن دراسة اقتصادية مو لازم ما تكون موجودة في المشروع، وراح يختلف من مشروع إلى آخر. فمثلا المشاريع الطبية ما يحتاج فيها دراسات اقتصادية، ولا يمكن حتى أنه نتكلم فيها اقتصاديا. لكن إذا كانت مشاريع متعلقة بالهندسة أو متعلقة بمواد، فوقتها ممكن يجب أن تتكلم عن المواد المستعملة في المشروع. ولكن في إبداع يتفهم المحكمين إن لسه المشروع في بداياته، وإذا وصلتوا بعدها بإذن الله لورشات اللي بعد إبداع وآيسف، وقتها راح يساعدونكم الدكاترة والمحكمين في الزيادة الاقتصادية للمشروع. Okay, Dr. Mark, as for the third question, how are statistics necessary when discussing a project?
Yeah.
Yes. هل الإحصاء ضروري في المشروع العلمي؟
No, good question, and it's one we didn't address in this. That we talked about the data, which is, we said, the most important part. So statistics are very, very, very good and very necessary to provide for the significance of the data. And what I mean by significance is how is it related in terms of accuracy in the experimentation. So if you have pure numbers, if you have tables that will provide data, you definitely want to do the right type of statistics. And we'll talk about the right type of statistics, as the individual projects go. But judges at IBDA and judges at ISEF are definitely going to look for statistics and how to again, it's got to how to do the significance of the project.
جواب مارك هنا هو أن القيم الإحصائية في المشروع مهمة جدا لأنها تبرز أهمية المشروع وكيف المشروع ممكن يساعد في تطبيقه، وممكن يساعد خارج نطاق البحث العلمي. We have the last question.
Okay. Only 4?
Yes, only 4 questions.